Hi everyone, I'm Kaylee, and I did my capstone paper on the childhood effects on disordered eating among adolescents. Why I chose this topic were strictly because of my passions. I am a pre nursing major and in the health and exercise science field, obviously. However, I'm really interested in dietetics and nutrition as a whole. And then I'm also interested in sports psychology. I love working with athletes and kind of seeing the athletic point of view of things. And then lastly, health awareness and proactivity. So maybe finding and creating solutions to problems before they become bigger problems within healthcare. So, diving into my paper, my research showed that parental feeding practices, along with childhood environments, and then those athletic pressures and maybe expectations, all those have an effect on disordered eating among children leading into adolescent years. While this may be pretty easily hypothesized and kind of an obvious statement to most people, I really dove into what kind of parental feeding practices may be better, what environment maybe fosters a more healthy mental relationship with food, and then also what we can do to decrease these athletic pressures, expectations, and reduce the amount of disordered eating among athletes as they reach their adolescent years. First up, we have parental feeding practices. So we have authoritative versus authoritarian. So authoritative is preferred in this case, and in many cases, it's more nurturing, caring, discipline coming from like a warm, caring place, whereas authoritarian is more stern, coercive, very like discipline heavy and does not always have the best effect on children and their um, environment growing up. Next, we have parental like struggles. So parents having their own struggles and putting that onto their children, even though they probably aren't meaning to do this. Children soak up everything their parents do and say. So maybe seeing their parents not eating, seeing their parents have a negative relationship with food, this all carries over into the children themselves. Restriction, so parents restricting themselves or restricting children, that all correlates positively with disordered eating and negative self-esteem. So already creating that bad relationship with food early on, and that can be really detrimental. Putting food in good and bad categories, that's a great example of that. Just not super great for children and then them moving into their adolescent years as well. That's why it's super important for good parental modeling. So, practicing self talk, eating well rounded meals, not focusing on diet culture, um, and more. Next, we have the environment piece. So, my research found that broken family, quote unquote, environments can put a strain on children and their relationship with food. Now, I learned that broken family and families. That's not just single parents, divorced families, things like that. Actually, a lot of families can fall into this category. For example, mine, we growing up never ate at the same time. We never had a lot of family meal times, maybe once a week. And that was just due to so many extracurriculars, sports, getting home at different times, school, homework, etc. So, not having that family mealtime can be a little bit detrimental to children just because having a meal where you're sitting around the table, everyone's eating a well balanced meal, enjoying their meal, this can be really helpful for a children's relationship with food, a child's relationship with food, and then also obviously bringing that into their adolescence. Um, and most importantly, being around parents or adults in general that restrict themselves, have diet culture, are constantly talking negatively about themselves, about their body, all those types of things. This can foster a really unhealthy environment and honestly have really long lasting effects on those children. Next, we have athletic pressures. So, for example, wrestlers need to maybe make a weight class, gain weight, lose weight, either or. gymnasts, dancers, so many more sports, but these in general, a lot of times you need to lean out, gain muscle mass, and this can be really heavy for children. And then also, it creates really bad habits for them as they move through their adolescent years. So, um, learning to eat clean, quote unquote, is can be really confusing and really messy for children, and they think that that may be the only way to be successful, whereas the focus should be more on macronutrients and uh, eating enough, feeling enough, where that definitely is not talked about enough in childhood sports, where now childhood sports are getting more and more intense and competitive. So now more than ever, this is super important for parents and adults and coaches to really focus on. So, implications. So, first of all, incorporating family meal times, super important. We talked about that in the slide before, but this is important to just foster an environment where everyone's enjoying their food. You have more balanced meals this way. You're not scrapping for dinner. Overall, it's just really healthy. Avoiding restriction, pressures, and modeling. So, really focusing on that healthy modeling and knowing that everything you say and do in front of your children, they're going to soak those up. Um, Next would be pediatricians implementing more standard education and emphasis on this topic during maybe their well checks or their visits. I know a lot of pediatricians focus heavily on milestones and nutrition in general, but they don't always touch on how parents can play a role in this, how relationships with food are very fragile and they can easily be broken or deterred. So, just like focusing on this during those pediatric well checks can be really important. And I know they send home pamphlets and make websites. So just overall incorporating this and uh, honestly, parent education could be really important and could honestly make a big difference in knowing maybe parents don't know that they shouldn't restrict. They don't know that everything they're doing is being soaked up. And so educating parents on this could definitely change the environment that they're in. Um, Next would be the knowledge of therapy and programs. So if you do have a child that's showing disordered eating symptoms, like knowing where you can go, what you can do, programs that are out there, therapy that is out there, just more knowledge of this and more recognition. The more it gets talked about, the more it will come up. So just spreading knowledge and awareness of these so that people can get the help that they need and that maybe a childhood problem doesn't spread into the adolescent years. And then lastly, I found an article that talks specifically about athletic protocols and screening tools. So I think it was at the college level, and they screened all their women athletes, and any of them that maybe screened to have disordered eating, they were able to help them uh, red flag that, help them, and really nip it in the butt before it became a full on eating disorder. Because with eating disorders, as we know, injuries can happen, underfueling, loss of period, and so many more things, just really, really unhealthy. So, next, to shift gears a little bit, I did my internship at ChildServe in Johnston. This was a super great experience. I honestly went in with not a ton of expectations. I had more of an expectation to do more shadowing than I have done. However, that doesn't take away from how much I have learned throughout my experience. So, for those of you who might not know, ChildServe is a specialty pediatric facility. Now, this is a very wide range of things. They have inpatient, they have outpatient, they have speech, OT, PT. This may be for inpatient kids, this may be for outpatient kiddos, really from the ages of 0 and they age out at about 30, just for purposes of like maybe you don't know where this child is going to go. Or they don't have family to take care of them, so they kind of have been increasing the age range as years have gone on. My supervisor was Molly Vanderlei, and she was the learning and development supervisor and coordinator. So An easy way to put what her job title is that she teaches classes for providers that might not be a nurse or a CNA, but may be the healthcare provider in a group home or home health, or maybe just working in the clinics, but they're not a nurse, but they need to know how to do certain things, how like such as G-tube feedings or seizure control or administering medication. So things as simple as that are actually very complex and can be really overwhelming for healthcare providers that didn't go through the schooling that a lot of other healthcare providers did. So she teaches all these classes that also include CPR, BLS, and all that sort of stuff. And so what I did for her is I revamped a lot of her PowerPoints. I made a lot of handouts. I bettered her education. So I went through everything and I kind of upgraded it, found new videos, found new resources just so that they were not so outdated. And while I did this, I learned so much about specifically seizure control, G-tube feedings, and also a lot about medication administration. Next, I did do some shadowing. This was my favorite part, although it is hard. I know 120 hours, it can't all be shadowing, but this was definitely my favorite part of my internship. So I spent a few days at the developmental clinics, which were mostly post NICU babies that are at home and their parents bring them in for checks, just to make sure they're hitting their milestones and all those types of things. Um, then I went to a home health, so I went to a kiddo's home and shadowed the nurse that works with him specifically. She goes to school with him, she brings him home, she does home health, and then at night, the kiddo is with his family. I also shadowed within the inpatient clinic, so there's two on the facility, and these are just for kids that ChildServe as their home. They need 24-hour care, so it's not able to be done at home. I also did some rehabilitation clinic, so that is these post NICU babies that maybe on a ventilator, might have a trach, need feeding tubes. So just taking care of those NICU babies, trying to get them weaned off so that they can go home. And then I also shadowed at a daycare slash school. So it's maybe for those kiddos that can't go to school, can go to school a half day. It ranges from kids with preemies, brain injuries, all sorts of diagnosis, even just an autism diagnosis, ADHD diagnosis. And then lastly, I most recently shadowed a respiratory therapist. This was my most exciting one just because respiratory therapists deal a lot with airways, trachs, and ventilators, and all that kind of stuff, pulmonary stuff. So this was really close to CRNA, which is a certified registered nurse anesthetist, which I eventually want to go to school for to do anesthesia. So anesthesia it deals with all the airway type stuff. So this was really interesting and definitely secured what I want to do because I love it and I love the go, go, go of it and not the sitting around. And while I know I'm going to do my time being a bedside nurse, I definitely want to be more on my toes, kind of thrive in the chaos type of nurse. So just to give an overview, I did love my internship. I wish that I got more shadowing hours in the beginning. I was definitely kind of promised more shadowing hours than I ended up getting. However, I learned so much by helping Molly, and as much as it might have been a little less interesting at the time, I look back and a lot of the stuff that I know now, I had no idea about before. So it was such a good experience. I do feel like I'm going to have a little bit of a leg up when I go into nursing school, just knowing the background of these things. So I would definitely recommend this. Definitely knowing that you might not do as much shadowing just because it's a 120-hour internship. But it was great. Molly was amazing, and I've learned so much throughout this process and made so many connections. So I'm hoping that down the line I can definitely use those to my advantage. Thank you guys. Here are my references.